Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. As you can probably tell by the title, today I'm going to be doing a video on how to quit your job. If you've ever been in a situation where you needed to quit your job, you can attest to the fact that it's a little bit awkward and uncomfortable, and especially if it's your first time quitting a job, it's really hard to navigate how to do that process in like a healthy and positive way. It can be just like pretty intimidating, especially if you're a young professional and this is the first time you've ever had to do that. As some of you guys may know, I recently quit my previous job just about a week ago now, so I'm pretty fresh off of this whole process, and I wanted to share some thoughts with you guys based on my experience and also just seeing other people in my organization and kind of cycle through and go through that process themselves. So I have 7 tips for you guys on how to quit your job in a healthy way, in a way that's not going to be like harmful to you or leave any like bad blood between you and your employer. So my first tip is, if you have a good relationship with your boss, which I know not everybody does, but if you do and you're able to talk about it, give your boss a heads up when you're thinking about leaving. So if you know, for example, that you're going to be moving or you want to change industries or something like that, where it's not anything negative relating to the company that's causing you to leave, it's just positive changes in your own life that you can pretty easily share, I'd say go ahead and share those with your boss as soon as you know that you're looking for a new position, just so the company has a heads up and can kind of figure out their own staffing requirements for the coming months. That's just a courtesy. It's obviously like not something everyone can do because not everyone's in a good place with their boss, and sometimes the reason you're leaving is related directly and negatively to your company, and so in those situations it may not be as appropriate to share that information. So my second step is going to be, once you have made a final decision, go ahead and ask your boss or manager for a sit-down in-person meeting. This isn't something you want to convey simply over email or some messenger. You definitely want to have an in-person conversation, just out of professionalism. So you can reach out to your boss over email or just in passing and say, hey, can I have 10 minutes of your time? I just need to chat with you about something. My third step kind of falls into that, which is when you're having that sit-down meeting with your boss, make sure that you're being honest with them about why you're leaving to the greatest extent that you can while still staying positive. If you're in a place where you're just moving on for positive reasons, like you're moving or you found a new job or you're changing industries, those are all reasons that you shouldn't shy away from sharing with your superiors. Obviously, if there's something negative like a bad relationship with your boss, bad relationship with your coworkers, or just you're overworked or something like that, those might not be the appropriate things to share, because you do want to maintain a positive relationship with your boss even after you leave the company. Whatever positive angle you can take out of your reasons for leaving, try to share that with them honestly. But if there's anything negative related to the company, I would not share that with them in that meeting. That's for another time and place, which I'll get to in a second. So the fourth step is, when you decide to quit, make sure that you're invested till the very end, till your very last day. There's been so many instances in my companies where I see people who have given their notice. They said, in 2 weeks or in 2 months, I'm going to be leaving. And then for the next 2 weeks or 2 months, their work tends to show the fact that they're leaving. They just aren't as invested in their work. They're not doing their best job. For me, I'm somebody who always will want people to know that I'm going to do my best job at anything that I am investing time in or that I'm committing to until I'm done. If you say, this is my finish date, make sure that you're committing all the way through that date and that you're doing your job in its entirety. You're not slacking. You're not just trying to get by, but that you're setting up your company to succeed after you're gone. My fifth step is that you want to communicate well in the transition process. So whether or not you have work, like specific projects or work that you're going to be transitioning to somebody else, or if it's just knowledge and a skill set on how to do a certain position that you're transitioning to another person, make sure that you do your best to communicate that that knowledge and information to the best of your ability. If you have somebody who's already in place to replace you, or another peer who's going to be coming into your role, is currently working at the company, it's best to try to communicate verbally with them in person about all the knowledge that you've gained over your time in that role, all the knowledge you might have about your certain work or your certain projects that you can pass on to that person. When I left my company, I worked on a number of projects and they were all being passed off to different people who are in my same position. I called them up, they all work out of different offices than I did. And I said, hey, you're getting these projects from me. Let me tell you a little bit about where they're at, what has to be done in order for them to be completed well, who you're going to be working with on these projects, that type of thing. Also make sure that you're using your written communication forms really effectively, even if you have somebody in the office that you can talk to about the project or about your role and they're going to be moving into your role. Even if you talk to them verbally, make sure you also provide written communication. And especially if you don't have somebody in place yet to replace you, if your company is going to bring somebody on after you leave, it's really important to leave good written communication so that they read through all of the notes you've left and kind of slowly ease their way in and feel like they have a good grasp of things. Just think about how you would want to come into something if you were the new employee and somebody had just left. You would want them to leave good documentation for you. I know my company used Salesforce, so I left a ton of written notes in Salesforce for each of the projects I was working on as a review for the people I talked to about, hey, this is what we talked about and here's all the details, because it's hard to remember everything that you hear over the phone. Verbal and written communication, really important in wrapping up your loose ends. All 5 of the points that I've already talked about are considering the company and leaving the company in a good spot. The next 2 are a little bit more you focused. So how do you leave yourself in a good spot? So number 6 is when you are leaving, make sure to talk to your boss or your HR manager about wrapping up logistics, whether that's your last paycheck or your health insurance, if you're on your company's health insurance. Or if you have a 401k, how do you access that? Will your PTO be paid out if that's a benefit that you have? Stuff like that. All the things that they provided you with, how are those things going to play out? Whether it's something you should still have access to or whether it's something you will no longer have access to. Make sure that you know the difference between the two and how to access the things that you should still have access to. 7th and last tip is also really important for you, which is make sure to leave on a positive note. So this can be really easy if the reasons you're leaving are positive, like we talked about before. But here's where, if you're leaving on a negative note, this is where this comes into play. So for example, if you're leaving because you have a bad relationship with your boss, or you just can't work with your coworkers, or there's just a bad workplace culture, or you're overworked, for any of those reasons, I know it can be really tempting once you put in your notice and you're ready to go to just be like, who cares? I'm out of here. Let me just say everything that I feel because I'm so aggravated and frustrated. But it's really important not to burn those bridges, especially between you and your direct supervisors, because you may want to come back to them one day and ask for a recommendation for a future job. So even though you don't love the place of employment, it can still be a valuable asset for you going forward. If you have any feedback, constructive criticism for your company, I would say it's best to save that for some sort of exit interview or exit session with an HR representative where there's confidentiality, meaning they're not going to go share everything you've said verbatim to your boss and say, this is what they said about you. It's a way to provide feedback more anonymously in a way that can be constructive for the company, but won't be destructive for you. If you go and say that to your boss, you don't have that same level of confidentiality, or even your peers. If you say those things to your peers, you don't have confidentiality and they may share it with your boss, and that just will lead to people being less likely to want to give you a positive recommendation in the future. So make sure that you do share that information, but just in a constructive context. If your company doesn't necessarily offer some sort of exit session or exit interview with an HR representative, you can certainly ask for one. That's very normal, and I don't think that any HR department would be put off by that, or they shouldn't be. So go ahead and ask if you have something to say, and just say you have some thoughts you'd like to share in an anonymous setting. Those are my 7 tips for how to leave a company in a healthy and positive way and maintain the relationships that you have there while watching out for yourself, but also doing your best to leave the company in a good spot. I hope that helps somebody out there who might be in this situation or thinking about it, or if that's just something that will come up in your future, you know how to handle it. If you like this video or is helpful or interesting to you, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more, hit that subscribe button and let me know what you'd like to see videos on in the future. Alright guys, I'll talk to you later. Bye!